Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease that occurs when a person's pancreas stops producing insulin. Around 400,000 people are currently living with type 1 diabetes within the UK, and I'm going to share with you my story. My name is Aidan. I'm a 19-year-old student who's currently studying in Manchester, and I've been type 1 diabetic for 12 years. I don't let diabetes control my life. To me, it's more of a psychological disease. Sometimes you can be the world's best diabetic, and sometimes it tries to control you physically and emotionally. When my sugars are high, I change into a person I don't want to be, and I simply can't help it. The only way I control my diabetes is to not let it control me. I stay positive in every situation and keep a smile on my face. I'm stuck with it for the rest of my life, so why would I moan? It all started January the 10th, 2008, when I was aged 9. All the symptoms were there: the extreme weight loss, the constant thirst all the time, and the horrible mood swings. I was diagnosed by my doctor straight away. They knew I had type 1 diabetes, and from there I was referred straight away to the Countess of Chester Hospital. Diabetes doesn't just affect the person with the condition, but also the people around them. I'm off to speak to my mum to speak about my youth, before and after diabetes, and how it affected her personally.
Before Aidan was diagnosed with diabetes, he was a happy kid. He was always smiling, always laughing. He was really popular with all his friends. His teachers loved him. Everybody loved him because he was just a really chilled, happy, really well-behaved little boy. When we came out of hospital, we stopped off at a local patch of grass. Aidan had a game of football with me, kicked the football about. And that just showed how much Aidan was going to cope with this, how much he was going to deal with it, and he's just been amazing the whole time. I don't imagine that Aidan be any different to how he is now. He's an amazing lad. The only thing that changed really was he had all this extra responsibility. He was sometimes took away from what he was doing because he had to check his blood sugar, or he'd be playing football and he'd have to stop playing football so that he could treat a hypo. So Aidan's gone off to university. He's my second child to go to university, so in one way I was ready to deal with my child growing up, leaving home. But obviously with Aidan having diabetes, there's always that extra worry of him not being at home with me. I've tried to prepare him as much as I can to be independent. He's obviously going on nights out when he's at university. It's a worry, whatever, for any parent who's got somebody going to a big city, starting to go on nights out, drinking lots. We have the extra worry of how that affects his blood sugars. It's really hard to say whether I would be the same person I am now if he hadn't been diagnosed. I don't get emotional. I'm not an emotional person. I used to be an emotional person, but now I deal with things by shutting off, by not thinking about them, by action rather than emotions. If something needs doing, I'll act on it, I'll try and get something done.
Type 1 diabetes is a 24/7 disease which requires constant management. One of the risks is the blood glucose going too high, which can cause blood to become acidic. This is called diabetic ketone acidosis and can be fatal if not treated quickly. Recently, I found myself in this situation due to a failed insulin pump.
Saturday morning I had a message from Caitlin, Aidan's girlfriend, let me know she was really worried. She'd rang 111 because Aidan looked like he was going into diabetic ketoacidosis. He woke up on Saturday morning with his insulin pump alarming that there was a problem. He was really quite poorly as soon as he woke up. He was vomiting, he had ketones of 5.5, which is really high. He had a blood sugar in the high 20s.
Aidan's normally a very bubbly person who's always full of energy, who never wants to lie in bed. He always gets up and is raring to do something. So to see him have no energy at all and not being able to do the simplest things like get on the bed without any help and Just seeing him so much pain was absolutely heartbreaking, soul destroying, especially being his girlfriend and knowing that somebody you love and care about is in so much pain and you can't take it away.
Caitlin rang 111, who said they'd send an ambulance, which was a really panicky time, not really knowing what to do because the ambulance took nearly 2 hours to come to him. He went straight to A&E, he was whisked straight into resus and then got really good care, and with diabetic ketoacidosis, if you get it in time then you quickly turn it round, and he was in for one night and home again the next day.
When they said, oh, we're going to have to keep Aiden in for the night, it was actually so horrible to know that I'm going to have to go home without him. I got in the Uber and I come home and I just cried and cried and cried on the way home because I just wanted it to make it all better for him. I didn't want a 19-year-old boy, my boyfriend, this boy who is just so full of energy and bubbly, to feel like he can't do normal things, what I can do and what other couples can do.
It brought back everything that I used to worry about. My favourite sound when Aidan was growing up and living at home was of him singing in the shower. It reminded me of that and the fear I used to have until I heard that noise. It just brought everything crashing back. I had a few moments during the week where if I thought about it too much I'd get upset, so typical me, I stopped thinking about it. Since then, Aidan's blood sugar has actually been really good. He has had quite a few hypos, but he's back in charge, he's back in control, and hopefully that was just a blip that we won't see again for a very long time, if at all.
The UK has one of the highest rates of type 1 diabetes in the world, and each person who has type 1 diabetes has a unique story. I'm off to speak to 2 type 1 diabetics to hear how they cope day to day.
I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 19, in my first year of university. Living with type 1 diabetes is difficult, but I try and not let it impact me as much as it can do. In terms of work and life, I don't let it affect me too much. It's more just if, say for example in work, if I'm going to a meeting, just being more aware of checking my sugar level before I go in, and I generally try and get it to be, my sugar level to be higher before a meeting, which is probably a bad thing to do, but for me, psychologically, I'd rather know that I'm not going to have a hypo. I get sometimes not nervous going, sort of standing up and going, I need to go and eat something sugary. It's just, it shouldn't be awkward, but it kind of still is. I find it easy to live with. I suppose it's the long-term issues that I won't know about until, say, 10, 15 years down the line. If my sugar level is up and down all the time, then obviously that can cause complications, but day to day I find it relatively easy to manage.
I was 9 years old when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I actually had my diabetes for quite a few years. I feel like with boys I was quite embarrassed about it for quite a few years because it was something I felt like I should be embarrassed about. It's always going to control your life. So many decisions that you make you have to think about it with everything you do, even if it's not even to do with food, like with exercise, holiday, going out. But I think you can limit how much it controls your life. I don't actually think about the long-term impacts of having diabetes because I always take it one day at a time. Because if I think about the long term, then like with my sugars, it's probably not good to think about it like that. But I'm quite hopeful with the technology and everything, like especially with the sensor. And they're thinking of doing like new insulin pumps or something that are a lot smaller.
It's natural for people with diabetes to worry about the future. Not only the worry about the long-term complications and the effect on their health, but also the cuts to the NHS and rumours of reduced funding for insulin pumps.
I do worry about Aidan in the future. I live in fear for the future because the NHS is soon, I'm sure, to be sold to the highest bidder. I worry that Aidan won't have the same lifespan that we have, or that life that he does have could be marred by complications. He's got himself involved politically. He's standing up for himself. He's standing up for the NHS. He went on a march yesterday to try and save the NHS. He met Chris Matheson, who's the MP for Chester, who hopefully, if it does come to fruition that pump funding is stopped, hopefully he is going to join in and help us fight that cause. I had to fight for the pump in the first place, and I'll fight and fight again to make sure that he keeps his pump.
What's clear to me is that people with type 1 diabetes try not to let this 24/7 disease stop them from doing anything. Advances in technology for diabetes products is an exciting prospect, but the dread of the collapse in NHS leaves people in fear for the unknown.